Ouais, il doit se faire panique de ça, là, j'ai compris.
Hello.
Il doit se comme je dis. Oui, ils don't see.
Right. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my practice of giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentients. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my practice of giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentients. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my practice of giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentients.
All right. How many are actually left in this class?
How many?
Yeah, how many are you left? I see 7, 8, 9, 10. That's it?
9, 10, 11.
11.
12. The 12th is walking through the door.
Okay, all right.
We had a doctor's appointment yesterday, so there were a few of us missing.
Oh, okay. All right.
Maybe there are 3 people on the call. Let's see.
All right.
Mhm.
So let's start with what are called eliminative and collective engagers. I'm not sure I like the terminology here. And actually, I found a whole chapter on this in Science and Philosophy. I didn't notice it's more towards the end. It's not part of the twofold division of consciousness, but it's more it's just after talking about the engagement of the mind, how the mind engages its object, or what objects the mind has, the different types of objects. And if you look at the book, I mean, in my case, what is it, page number? Page number is maybe 400 or something. But that's just because of the program I use. There is a chapter called Engagement via Affirmation and Engagement via Exclusion.
What chapter number is that?
Page 256.
2056 in the book.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's called Engagement via Affirmation versus Engagement via Exclusion. So where is it? In my text is page 300. Yeah, well, it doesn't mean anything. It's part of, let me just check the main chapter. How the mind engages its object.
Yeah, I think we got it.
What page?
Page 256.
Yep.
256. Okay. Let's start with that tomorrow because it's a little bit more complicated. Now, what I've prepared for today, well, first of all, let's read through Mind in Tibetan Buddhism. It's very straightforward. It's not that difficult to understand. And then I also prepared Panchen Sontarpa's explanation on Senjuk and Drumjuk, which gives you also some information. It also talks about how phenomena are related. Maybe you've already studied this, but if not, well, you may find that helpful. Okay, so anyway, if you check, well, what page number is it? 140, I thought it was. 140 in Mind in Tibetan Buddhism. Oh, no, that's wrong. Yeah. Page 40, 141. If you've got the text, if you've got Mind in Tibetan Buddhism, please open page 141. In the middle of the page, it reads eliminative and collective engagers. The small print is Geshe Jambe Sambe's text, the original, the root text of Lorig. And then Ladi Rinpoche explains it. It's part of the other twofold divisions of awareness and knowledge. First, you have mistaken and non-mistaken consciousness, cognizer, valid cognizer, and so forth, I think. And then comes eliminative and collective engagers. Okay. So it says the definition of an awareness. Oh, just something about the terminology. Actually, it doesn't say collective engagers. It says affirmative engager or engager via affirmation, to use the term used in science and philosophy. Eliminative engager or engagement via or engager via exclusion or via elimination, and engager or engagement via affirmation. These are the terms used in science and philosophy, and that's really what it means in English as well. Or that would be a literal translation from the Tibetan. That's what it means in Tibetan. Therefore, well, what are we talking about when we talk about an eliminative engager or an exclusive, like an engagement or an engager via exclusion? Well, it refers to conceptual consciousness and sound. Sound means expressive sound. Another word for expressive sound is word or words, something that expresses a meaning, a sound which expresses a meaning. So words, it depends. It can be more than one word. So then it would be expressive sounds. No, it would still be in Tibetan expressive sound, even if it's a phrase. In Tibetan, you will still call it expressive sound. And then of these different phrases, of that type of phrase, you have different types. So you have expressive sounds. In English, yeah, word or phrases, those are expressive sounds. Okay, words and phrases. Eliminative engagers. So eliminative engagers are either words or conceptual consciousnesses. And as the name implies, well, they get at their object by eliminating everything that is not that object. It's pretty straightforward. If you want to think of a vase or a table, all you take to mind are the most important characteristics that help the mind to engage or to apprehend a table, but nothing else appears to the mind. I mean, shape and color may appear, but basically what you associate with table, all that appears to your mind and nothing else. While if you look at an actual table, in the case of a non-conceptual awareness, perceiving, apprehending the table, in that case, all the details of the table that is in the sphere of your vision appear together to the mind. Now here, the texts don't talk about apprehending all these aspects, but at least they appear. They appear to the mind, and whether you apprehend them or not, that's not the point. But with the conceptual mind, again, appearance here, well, whatever you need to get at in order to get at the table. So whatever needs to appear for you to get at the table appears to your mind. So you can also talk about appearance when it comes to the conceptual mind. So one is affirmative in that it doesn't exclude anything. It just allows for whatever is there to appear to the mind. It's an affirmative phenomenon that appears to your mind. In fact, nothing appears to your mind that is a negation. There's no negation that appears to your mind. So it's not like the opposite of, well, yeah, well, they say actually the opposite of not table would also appear to your mind. But simply because of the relationship between table and the opposite of not table. And anyway, that's not its main object. The main object is the table itself, and just really everything about the table appears. Okay. Having said that, even subtle objects such as its impermanence appears to that eye consciousness apprehending table. Okay. Now the definition is slightly different. The definition doesn't reflect what I just explained. So the definition of an awareness, which is an eliminative engager, is a knower or an awareness that engages its object by the power of terminology. It will be explained in Lati Rinpoche's commentary. And then awareness, which is an eliminative engager. Oh yeah, sorry, that's not the definition of collective engager yet. So awareness, which is an eliminative engager, and conceptual consciousness are synonyms. This is according to Benjamin Dagba, for instance. Many textbooks, then it says, posit this definition differently, and one should examine to discover which appears more easily to one's mind. So in the end, it's up to us, whichever definition we choose. For example, in the collected topics of prime cognition of Jetsumpa, Pupujo, and Ratu. So Jetsumpa Chugi Gensen, that's the Sarah J. author. Pupujo is a master of Drepung Losaling. Ratu is from Ratu Monastery, which is located also in Drepung as part of Drepung, but it's a different monastery. So they have different textbook where they have different assertions. Ratu Monastery has its own textbooks, uses some of the other monasteries, but also has their own text on certain topics. Anyway, so in this case here, when it comes to eliminative and collective engagers, those three, all three posit the same definition when it comes to an eliminative engager. They're posited as a knower that engages its object in a partial manner. Another translation of that would be a knower or an awareness that engages its object by differentiating its parts. In science and philosophy, this definition is mentioned as part of the division into three types of awareness. So consciousness being divided into three types. It talks about parsing. Parsing, that's an unusual term, but yeah, differentiating or parsing its aspects or parsing its object. In other words, it engages in its object in a partial manner versus in a non-differentiative manner, not differentiating its parts. That is the definition according to Jetsumpa, Pupujo, and Ratu. That's a definition of an eliminative engager. Then Jamyang Shepa, the textbook author of Drepung Gomang, he posits it as a knower or an awareness that engages its object by way of its own wish. Okay. Then Jison Draba gives the same definition as this text. As this text here, a knower that engages its object by the power of terminology. Terminology, we've used the word terminology in science and in philosophy. The term is linguistic convention, but it actually here refers to a meaning generality, refers to a generic image or meaning generality. So the word terminology here refers to meaning generality, as Lati Rinpoche explains. Thus, the explicit object of expression of the sound expressing pot is pot's meaning generality. So the explicit object, this is a little weird, like with sounds, like how do you talk about an object, for instance? The object of expression of the sound expressing pot is pot's meaning generality. So in other words, when a word is expressed, let's say the word vase. The word vase is an eliminative engager because all that the word expresses is whatever is not vase. It doesn't express anything more than vase or anything more than a bulbous flat-based phenomenon able to perform the function of holding water. In other words, the main characteristics of a vase. Nothing else is expressed. But it does so through the power of terminology, through a meaning generality. Now, that is usually explained to mean the person expressing this word has the motivation to do so. So there's a conceptual mind wishing to express something, wishing to express word, wishing to express vase, to say vase. That is said to be the meaning generality through the power of which then the sound vase comes into existence. Okay. So therefore, it's not that the meaning generality is an object of that sound, because the sound doesn't say meaning generality of vas, but rather it's the mind that wishes to say vas, that motivation, through the power of that motivation and through the power of this motivational consciousness, which is a conceptual mind. Well, what appears to it? A meaning generality, a generic image, which has to appear because otherwise it couldn't function as a conceptual mind. And therefore, the word vas that arises, or that the word vas that is expressed a moment later, arises through the meaning generality of the motivational conceptual consciousness that preceded it. Does that make sense? It's a little unusual, but if you think about it, like expressive sound, words are, and we're not talking about a Buddha here. A Buddha is always different. Buddhas are different. They're explained differently. Some would say a Buddha's words are not expressive sound, or it's through what the disciple wishes to hear or needs to hear, what they're interested in, through the power of that generic image or of the motivation that preceded the Buddha's explanation. The words were expressed. But that's a little bit debatable. Let's just talk about ordinary people, like expressing something. Everything I say right now, I've had the motivation to do so. So this motivation that I've had with regard to every word that's coming out of my mouth, there has been a conceptual consciousness with the motivation to say so, even though I'm not aware of it, but still there's that motivation and the meaning generality appearing to that conceptual consciousness through the power of that terminology. The word is expressed, or through the power of that linguistic convention, it is expressed, or the meaning generality. But we're not studying much about sounds here anyway. This is part of the end of the first chapter of the Pramanavartika. In Lorig, it's not explained much. Most important here is the conceptual mind. The conceptual mind, for instance, apprehending vas. Vas is a eliminative engager in that it can only get at the vas via the meaning generality, here described as linguistic convention. I don't know why. Honestly, I don't know why. It makes sense in the case of the motivation to say something, that the meaning generality, or in this case, is a sound generality, and so you call it a linguistic convention. But why in the case of the conceptual consciousness apprehending vas, why is the meaning generality of vas here called a linguistic convention? I don't know. But anyway, usually we don't give it much thought when we study this. We just know here the linguistic convention, or the terminology that is part of this definition, refers to the meaning generality. So we don't really question why it's called terminology here. It could be, I mean, my sense would be that the original texts that describe eliminative engagers, they may have put more emphasis on the sound. And there it makes sense. Again, the motivation before you express something, there's the motivation to say such, and that is a sound generality. It's like the words, you want to use words, you think about the words. Of course, you also want to express a certain meaning, but there's a conceptual consciousness that motivates you to express certain words. All right. Okay. Thus, the explicit object of expression of the sound expressing pot is pot's meaning generality. The determined object of the expression, determined object of expression is pot itself. So the explicit object of expression. Yeah, so the explicit object. Yeah, sometimes I say it's the explicit object, but it's not what the sound expresses. Again, it's a little bit complicated, too complicated for Lorig. It comes later in Pramanavartika. But the determined object, or the conceived object, well, the determined object of the expression is pot itself. Again, it's a little weird to use the same words, the same terminology for the different objects of a sound that you use for a mind. It's a little unusual. And again, when we debate it, we don't really question it. But anyway, let's go let's continue. So with regard to saying pot, there's a thought consciousness, which is the motivation wishing to say pot. And through the explicit appearance of the pot's meaning generality to that motivating thought consciousness, one says pot. So this explains it clearly here. Anyway, no need to go too much into detail, but similarly, when thought engages its object, it does so in association with the meaning generality. Okay, so this is pretty clear. And thus, awarenesses, which are eliminative engagers, that is, thought consciousnesses, are ones which engage their objects by the power of terminology. All right, so that's the explanation of eliminative engagers. There's just a short, it's not that much, it's just a short paragraph. And then you have the definition of an awareness, which is a collective engager. It's an awareness or a knower that engages its object by the power of the thing. Power of the thing. What is the thing? Awareness, which is a collective engager, and non-conceptual consciousness are synonymous. So not just direct perception, but a broader category, which is non-conceptual consciousness. There's a difference between a non-conceptual consciousness and a direct perception, right? How many possibilities between a non-conceptual consciousness and a direct perception?
3 possibilities.
3 possibilities. Okay. All right. Posit the 3 possibilities.
So something that is a direct perception but not a non-conceptual consciousness is an consciousness.
No. Non-conceptual consciousness and direct perception. Non-conceptual.
Direct perception. They have 3 possibilities. So non-conceptual consciousness pervades direct perception.
So how do you express it? You just said whatever is a direct perception is not necessarily a non-conceptual consciousness. Didn't you say that?
Yeah. No. Whatever is not necessarily. It's not necessarily.
Oh, so whatever is a non-conceptual consciousness is not necessarily a direct perception. Yes, positive.
Yogic direct perception. No, sorry. Sorry.
So whatever is a non-conceptual consciousness is not necessarily a direct perception. So a yogic direct perception.
Subsequent cognition, subsequent eye consciousness.
It follows, and subsequent eye consciousness, it is not a direct perception. Take the second moment of an eye consciousness apprehending vase. It follows it is not a direct perception.
Except
It follows it is a direct perception because it is an eye consciousness that is incontrovertible with regard to its object.
no pervasion.
So it follows it is an eye conscious. It follows it is a direct perception because it is a non-mistaken mind that is free from conceptuality.
No pervasion.
It follows there's a pervasion because that's the definition of direct perception.
But direct perception had to be a valid cognizing.
An awareness.
It has to be non-mistaken, right? A direct perception is non-mistaken. It's free from conceptuality, so therefore it's non-conceptual, yes, and it's non-mistaken.
An awareness to which an object appears but is not ascertained. That be one.
Okay, an awareness to which the object appears but is not ascertained. It follows it's not a direct perception.
Agreed.
It follows there's a direct perception because it's one of the divisions of direct perception.
Reason not established.
It follows it is because it says a direct perception has a self can be divided into self-knower, into inattentive or inattentive perception, that is an awareness to which the object appears but is not ascertained, a yogic direct perception, and a mental direct perception. Mental and sensory perception, of course. So the texts are very clear that it's non-mistaken, it's free from conceptuality, it's non-mistaken. An awareness to which the object appears but is not ascertained is a non-mistaken mind. We haven't really gone through it yet, but it's defined as a non-mistaken mind. So therefore, it's a direct perception.
Okay.
An eye consciousness perceiving the shape of a blue mountain.
That's it. An eye consciousness apprehending a blue snow mountain, or an eye consciousness apprehending the horns of a rabbit. Those are non-conceptual minds. Are they direct perceptions? No. So it follows that the eye consciousness apprehending a blue snow mountain is not a direct perception.
So,
Why
Why?
not?
because he's mistaken. It's a wrong.
Because it's okay. All right. All right. Oh, and it seems we have to do a little bit more of musum. 3 and 4 possibilities. Okay. What is the difference between valid cognition and non-conceptual consciousness?
One is new, the other is not necessarily new.
What are the possibilities? How many possibilities between
think-
non-conceptual consciousness and valid cognition? Non-conceptual consciousness and valid cognition. How many possibilities?
4 possibilities.
4.
4.
Okay, 4 possibilities. Who says 3? Anyone left? Okay. So tell me the pervasions. Posit the pervasions.
One, the common locus would be an eye consciousness perceiving blue.
An eye conscious perceiving blue, a valid cognition, and a non-conceptual mind. You may want to specify valid cognition.
Valid cognizer perceiving blue.
First moment of an
First moment.
First moment. Very good. So the first moment of an eye consciousness apprehending blue. Very good. That's something that is both. And the person who said 3 possibilities, please posit whatever is one is not necessarily, no, whatever is one is necessarily the other. Posit that pervasion.
The non-conceptual awareness. No.
No, right?
No.
No. Okay, so whatever is a non-conceptual awareness is not necessarily a valid cognition, and whatever is a valid cognition is not necessarily a non-conceptual awareness, right? Okay, great. I guess that's pretty clear now from the speed of your answer. And yeah. Okay, great. So that's enough. Anyway, so non-conceptual mind includes every so an easy way to remember, non-conceptual consciousness includes every direct perception and every wrong non-conceptual consciousness. Those are the 2 possibilities. So if you wanted to divide a non-conceptual consciousness, you can divide it into direct perceptions and non-conceptual wrong consciousnesses. Okay, great. Right. So the definition of an awareness, okay, that engages its object by the power of the thing. Okay, we'll debate that in a moment when we get to Panchen Sontapa's text. Okay. Awareness, which is a collective engager, and non-conceptual consciousness are synonymous. The mind engages in its object, Lati Rinpoche explains, the mind engages in its object through the power of the thing, which is the object's casting its aspect to the mind apprehending it. All right, so in the case of the vase appears to the eye consciousness apprehending vase. So what is the thing? That vase, right? Both Jetsumba and Pupujok posit different definition, a knower that engages its object in a non-partial manner, so without differentiating between the different aspects. They further posit a threefold division of eliminative engagers into awarenesses, sounds, and persons, which are such means eliminative engagers, and a twofold division of collective engagers into awarenesses and persons, which are such. According to Panchen Sontarpa, and this is exactly the passage that we're going to go through today, according to Panchen Sontarpa, which is his commentary on the first chapter of the Pramanavartika, and that's in accordance with the presentation here of awareness and knowledge by Geshe Jambe Sampe, because he follows Panchen Sontarpa. One would not, in this book here, in Mind in Tibetan Buddhism, the small print, one would not posit a person of either eliminative or collective engagement. If one were to posit a person of eliminative engagement, an ordinary person, there's the fault that such a person has in fact both eliminative and collective engagement. At the time of conceptual consciousness, consciousnesses are manifest in his continuum. He is an eliminative engager, and when directly perceiving ones are manifest, he's a collective engager. So that would mean a person would be both A person would be both. So because you, at the time when you perceive the vase, you're also thinking about the vase, which would mean the person is both a collective engager and an eliminative engager. And according to Pensation Tarpa, there's no common locus. The other scholars, the other masters like Jetsumba and so forth, they would say, yeah, well, you can have both. Or you can have a common locus. You can have something that is both an eliminative engager and a affirmative or collective engager. But of course, it's a little difficult because the person is in one way engaging in its object through exclusion and not through exclusion. So those are definitely direct opposites. All right. Moreover, Benjamin Taba feels that it's not suitable to posit, as does Pupujo, for instance, a Buddha superior. So a Buddha superior is just another way of saying a Buddha who's a being. It's a little unusual. We think of Buddha always as the person. But strictly speaking, the word Buddha can also be used for the qualities of a Buddha. So the mind of the Buddha is Buddha. It's an awakened one. So it's an awakened mind. Therefore, you say it's Buddha. The qualities, so the mental consciousness, the cessation in the continuum of a Buddha are all in Tibetan called Buddha. But an Arya Buddha, here they say Buddha superior, but actually the Tibetan word translates to Arya Buddha. So when you say Arya, Arya is always a person. And Arya Buddha would mean the person Buddha. In the case of our present Buddha, the historical Buddha, that's Buddha Shakyamuni. So an Arya Buddha, a person Buddha, as an instance of a person of collective engagement, doesn't accept that because a Buddha superior does not engage objects by the power of the thing. A Buddha's omniscient consciousness does not have to depend on the object. So it goes as far as saying that according to Penjison Darpa, not every non-conceptual mind, not every direct perception is a collective engager or an affirmative engager, because it doesn't happen through the power of the object. It's not through the power of the object appearing to the mind, but rather the Buddha's mind engages the object through his own power. So the Buddha's through its own power. So the Buddha's mind, the omniscient mind, engages its object through its own power. Because a Buddha's consciousness engages all phenomena without obstruction, is not the case that he engages some objects which cast their aspect and does not engage others that do not. Yeah, so that's the distinction. Therefore, when it says non-conceptual consciousness and collective engager are synonymous, it does not include a Buddha's mind, according to Penjison Darpa. Okay, so this is what it says in Mind in Tibetan Buddhism. It's very short. Any questions so far? Is this explanation clear?
Geshima,
Yes.
sorry about that relationship. If it is a valid cognizer, it is a non-conceptual consciousness, right? Valid cognizer is pervaded by non-conceptual consciousness.
It follows an inferential cognizer, the first moment of an inferential cognizer apprehending impermanence, the impermanence of sound, right? That is a valid cognition, but it's not a non-conceptual mind, right? Yeah. Okay. Oh yeah, sorry, I thought it was clear before. Never mind. Okay, great. So now I'm going to go through Penjison Tapa's relatively brief explanation of Senju and Dumjo, eliminative engagers and collective engagers. Now, one thing that needs to be clear here is a particular type of relationship, and I don't know whether you learned about this. The way I translated this really long term, that even in Tibetan it's pretty long. You can hear it's quite long. So in English, I've translated it as being of one substantial entity of arising and abiding with regard to object, time, and nature. Have you ever heard this expression? In particular, the letter part, with regard to object, time, and nature. Have you ever heard this term? You studied this? Anyone? No? It's totally
I've heard
new.
it.
You've heard it?
Very
You've
much.
heard it before?
Yeah.
Have you heard it? Have you heard it like a different kind of way of translating this? Being one substantial entity of arising and abiding with regard to, or it could also be translated um, of ease in establishment, but that's just translating every word. But what it actually means is being of one substantial entity of arising and abiding. Okay, I'll explain what it means. If you study the first chapter of the Pramana-Vachika, you need this expression. First of all, being one substantial entity means being of one nature, and the word substantial implies impermanent. Okay, so two things that are of one substantial entity means that they're impermanent and are of one nature. Now, there are plenty of examples. Vase and its color, sound and its impermanence. What else? Anything that is impermanent. So you and your arm, any part of you, for instance, any aspect of you. For instance, being a product and being impermanent. So product and impermanent. They're also one substantial entity. Okay. Now, these are all examples of something being one substantial entity. Then you have something more here where it says that rising, abiding, and ceasing are each simultaneous. So saying, for instance, that sound and impermanent are of one substantial nature, that's okay. Sound and impermanent. Sound, being impermanent is a quality of sound, but impermanent and sound do not arise, abide, and cease at the same time. I'm not saying the impermanence of sound, but impermanent itself. So there's a difference between saying something is of one substantial nature, of one substantial entity, like I said, impermanent in general and sound, and saying that they are one substantial entity in such a way that their arising, abiding, and ceasing are each simultaneous. Okay. Pardon?
This came up recently. So arising, abiding, and ceasing are simultaneous. So you just,
No. Arising, abiding, and ceasing are each simultaneous. Not saying arising and abiding don't happen simultaneously, by the way.
but arising is simultaneous with what?
With what? With arising of what? I mean, what do you mean with arising of what?
But when you say arising, abiding, and ceasing are each simultaneous, don't they have to be simultaneous?
No. The arising, if you have two phenomena, so vas and its impermanence. The arising of vas and its impermanence are simultaneous. The abiding of vas and its impermanence are each. You see, like they are impermanent, and their arising, abiding, and ceasing are each. So each of these arising are simultaneous, abiding are simultaneous, and ceasing are simultaneous. I don't know how else to put it. So their arising is simultaneous. It just becomes really wordy if you say that. So their arising, their abiding, and their ceasing, they're each simultaneous. That's why I added each, because saying they're arising. Well, first of all, do abiding and ceasing, are they simultaneous in general? The abiding and the ceasing of the vase, do they happen simultaneously?
Yes.
Yeah.
Do the arising, abiding, and ceasing happen simultaneously?
No.
No. Why does the arising not happen simultaneous with the abiding?
Because it needs to be arisen to abide.
Must have been arisen. Because there's so many times this mistake is made. Unbelievably how often you find it in you find it in the translation of Lama Tsongkhapa's commentary on fundamental wisdom, Ocean of Reasoning. You find it in the first chapter of Science and Philosophy, just saying arising. No, not arising, having arisen. That's really important. Yeah. I'm glad you caught that. All right. So anyway, but in Tibetan here, it uses the present tense, the arising, which is simultaneous, of course, with the cause. At the time of the cause, something is arising. And here we're talking about two phenomena being of one nature, being impermanent, and their arising happening at the same time, their abiding and ceasing also happening at the same time. Okay, so abiding and ceasing are fine, but the arising part and it's in Tibetan, the present tense is used. Anyway, so without going into that, but most important here is, moreover, there are now three characteristics with regard to object, time, and nature. So the minds for which each serves as the appearing object are equivalent. In other words, if one appears to a mind, to a direct perceiver, the other also has to appear to that. I'm thinking right now I'm terribly busy with something else, but I was going to give you like a whole list of each of these different relationships with the meaning and an example. Like all the there's so many ones, being of one nature, being of one substantial entity, being of one substantial entity of equal pervasiveness, and so forth. There's like a list of 4 or 5 of them. I'll put them together for you. But here, most important is this last one, this longest one, being of one substantial entity of arising and abiding with regard to object, time, and nature. Without understanding that, you won't understand science and philosophy, because this is part of it. Again, okay, so first of all, they're impermanent, they're of one nature, their arising happens at the same time, and so forth. Moreover, the minds for which each serves as the appearing objects are equivalent. The minds for which they serve as the appearing object are equivalent.
Where is it in the text?
Pardon?
Where is it on the text?
It's not in the text.
Okay.
Sorry. It's not in well, it is in this text here, but you don't find it because it's not put in that way. It's in here, but it only mentions it mentions object, but then the translator mistranslated it. Here the word location is used. That's a mistranslation. It actually means object, time, and nature. But it doesn't specify in the same way as the text usually specify it, saying not only are they of one substantial entity, but also with regard to object, time, and nature, to say it simply. So what does it mean with regard to object? Whatever is the appearing object of one, no, whatever is the mind for which each serves as the appearing object, they must be equivalent. So whatever is the mind for which one of them serves as the appearing object must also be the mind for which the other serves as the appearing object. Okay, if you can't write it down now, never mind. I'm going to give it to you once I finish this other work. I'll write it out for you. So the minds, that's one aspect. The time of their respective arising is the same. So that's pretty much the same as the arising is the same, but never mind, it's just repeated here as the time. And the phenomena that of one nature with each are equivalent. So whatever is equivalent with whatever is of one nature with one must be equivalent, whatever is of one nature with one must be of one nature with the other, and vice versa. So now this is really difficult. Let's say, for instance, a vase and its color. Let's check. It follows that they are one substantial entity. Yeah. It follows that they are of one substantial entity, and their arising, abiding, and ceasing are each simultaneous.
Agrees.
Very good.
Each simultaneous.
Each simultaneous. So in other words, the color of the color of the vase and the vase, the arising are simultaneous, their abiding are simultaneous, and their ceasing are simultaneous. Okay. So moreover, it follows that the minds for which each serves as the appearing object are equivalent. Except. All right. And it follows that the time of their respective arising is the same. It's just repeating it. And it follows that the phenomena that are of one nature with each are equivalent.
What does it mean? What does it mean?
Pardon?
What is equivalent here? What do you mean by equivalent?
Whatever is of one nature with one must be of one nature with the other.
Okay.
So whatever is one nature, equivalent means synonymous. So whatever is of one nature with the vase must be of one nature with the color of the vase. Whatever is of one nature with the color of the vase must be of one nature with the vase.
No.
No way.
Okay. Posit it. Posit something that is of one nature with well, whichever which of the ones there has no pervasion.
If the vase is one nature with it, it is not necessarily one nature with the color of the vase.
No, if something is of one nature with the vase, it's not necessarily of one nature with the color of the vase. Posit it.
The smell of the vase.
Smell of the vase, yeah.
The smell of the vase. Okay, so therefore the color of the vase is not of one nature with regard to object, time, and nature. With the color of the vase and the vase are not of one substantial nature with regard to object, time, and nature.
Oh, Geshima, so I think with each having the same arising, abiding, and ceasing,
Yeah.
it was stated in the first volume, and we just call it like coexisting entities.
Coexisting entities. Okay, so being of one substantial entity of coexistence with regard to object, time, and nature. Sure, you can say that, but coexistence, that's a different term. Of equal pervasiveness, that actually would be being of one substantial entity of coexistence. That's
Okay,
something
so-
else. That's something
Okay.
else. Okay, but what about, let's take the example. So usually through examples is the easiest way to understand it. With regard to a vase and its smell, it follows that there are one substantial entity with regard to object, time, and nature.
One.
It follows they're not one substantial entity with regard to object, time, and nature. Okay. It follows that they are one substantial entity with regard to object. It follows that the minds for which each serves as the appearing object are equivalent. So in other words, a mind for which the one of them serves as the appearing object is necessarily the mind for which the other serves as the appearing object.
Why?
Ah, very good. So it follows they're not equivalent. Okay. Posit a mind for which either the smell of the vase serves as the appearing object, but that's not the mind of which the vase serves as the appearing object.
Nose consciousness.
The nose.
Yeah, very good. The nose consciousness that apprehends the smell of the vase. Very good. So you remember with the color and the vase itself, there's no problem because the mind to which the color of the vase appears to that also the vase has to appear. I mean, to which the appearing object. So the mind for which each serves as the appearing object in the case of the vase and its color, it can only be a direct perception. And in the case of a direct perception, when the vase appears, the color appears, and when the color appears, the vase appears. But the problem is the moment you use a different characteristic of the vase, which would be the smell of the vase. So far we've had two examples where all three are not given, being one substantial entity with regard to object, time, and nature. Those are not fulfilled. Can come up with an example where all three are fulfilled? So being of one substantial entity, so two phenomena being one substantial entity with regard to object, time, and nature.
The 8 particle of the vase.
Pardon?
The subtle particle of the vase.
The subtle particles of the vase. Okay, the subtle particles of the vase. Is whatever is of one nature with the vase necessarily of the same nature as with the particles of the vase?
Why?
Well,
Okay.
because it's one substantial entity with regard to object, time, and nature. Let me give you an example of something that is definitely all three. The impermanence of vase and vase.
Yeah.
Impermanence and vast. They are one substantial entity with regard to object, time, and nature. Why? Because, well, first of all, whenever the vase appears, or whenever the vase is the appearing object of a particular mind, then to that mind also the impermanence of the vase appears. So when the vase appears to a direct perception, then also the impermanence has to appear. Similarly, time, of course, is the same. And then nature, yes, whatever is of one nature with the vase must be of one nature with the impermanence of the vase. So this is the one that you may struggle with a little bit. But based on that, you could also answer the example of the subtle particles of the vase. So whatever is of one nature with the vase must be of the same nature as the impermanence of the vase, right? Therefore, even the smell of the vase is of one nature with the impermanence of the vase. And therefore, you could say that also the subtle particles of the vase, whatever is, so even the smell of the vase is of the same nature as the subtle particles of the vase, which makes even more sense because the smell of the subtle particles is also the smell of the vase. So therefore, that was a very good answer, saying the subtle particles of the vase. But it's not that easy to understand it. We first need to look at impermanence, for instance. So the impermanence of the vase, these subtle particles of the vase, they're all one substantial entity with regard to object, time, and nature of the vase. Okay, having established this, this is really important. Now let's go back to collective engagers and eliminative engagers. Okay, so here it says in the text, for instance, I translated this, take a table. It doesn't say table, it says sound, but it's too confusing with sound, expressive sound and sound. So I just said table. So take a table. The word and conceptual consciousness taking it as their object are eliminative engagers. It says, because in relation to table, other valid cognitions and words must be engaged, it says. Why? Because, and this is now the explanation that you read between the lines, because the features of the table, such as being a product and impermanent, are not the object of the conceptual consciousness apprehending table, or they're not the object, they're not the objects of the word table. While on the other hand, take the table to the eye consciousness apprehending it, the table's features of being produced and impermanent appear to it. Why? Because these features of the table and the table are of one substantial entity with regard to object, time, and nature. All right. So therefore, an eye consciousness apprehending table, what appears to it? Not just the table, but also the table's subtle particles, the table's impermanent, and the table's being the feature of being a product. All of this appears to the eye consciousness. So therefore, it is said that the eye consciousness apprehending table is therefore a collective engager because anything that is of the same nature with the table with regard to object, time, and nature appears to it. I mean, more than that appears. But the Pramanavartika focuses in particular of this relationship between the main object of a collective engager, or of eye consciousness in this case, the main object and whatever is of the same substantial entity with regard to object, time, and nature. It totally focuses on that because it's very clear-cut in this sense. Does that make sense? So I know this is a little overwhelming, but well, Atisha told me I should talk about anything to do with the second chapter of the Pramanavartika, and that is indirectly part of it, actually. I mean, understanding Lorig, understanding it with regard to Pramanavartika. Again, this relationship is a little bit unusual. We studied this actually already as part of Dutta, as collected topics, but we really fully understand it when we study the first chapter of the Pramanavartika, this relationship like being of one substantial entity with regard to object, time, and nature. All right. So anyway, having said all this, now I'll say it one more time. the texts are very clear that when you perceive a table with a conceptual consciousness, it's an eliminative engager. Why? Because other than the table, so for instance, its impermanence and its being a product do not appear to the mind. And so you would need other valid cognitions. In the case of that conceptual consciousness, you would need other valid cognitions that take to mind the impermanence of the table, or the fact that it's a product. You need other minds. In the case of the I consciousness, of course, the impermanence of the table only appears to it. But in terms of appearance, you don't need another mind. Does that make sense? In terms of the appearance of the impermanence of the table, you don't need another mind to which the impermanence of the table appears separately, simply because it appears already to the I consciousness. So therefore, it's a collective engager. Okay. So we've already heard if two phenomena are one substantial entity, so there's a debate in here now. If two phenomena are one substantial entity, it follows that one appears to a direct perception, the other must not necessarily appear to that direct perception. So the example you gave was the smell, the sound of the smell of vase and bass. But the example that Benjamin Daba gives is like a visual form and its tactile aspect. The visual form and its tactile aspect. So to a blind person, the tactile aspect of the visual form appears, the tactile aspect of the vase appears, but of course not the vase itself. So then what about the base or the bottom part of a vase and the vase itself? Are they of one substantial entity with regard to object, time, and nature?
No, why?
So it follows that they are not one substantial entity with regard to object, time, and nature.
Accept.
Okay. It follows that they are of one substantial entity.
Accept.
It follows that they are of one substantial entity with regard to object.
Why?
Oh, it follows that they're not of one substantial entity with regard to object.
That's the one about if it appears to one perception, it has to appear to the other.
Yes. Object as an appearing object, yes.
No, why?
Okay. So it follows that whatever is a mind to which the vase appears, it's not a mind to which its base appears.
Except its base means like the bottom part, right?
Okay, posit that I consciousness to which the vase appears, but not its base.
Yes, looking at the vase from like a bird's eye view.
Okay. So it follows to that I consciousness. So take the I consciousness apprehending a vase through the appearance of its rim, for instance, the lips or the rim at the opening. When the person in whose continuum that the I consciousness arises looks at it from the top. That's your example.
Yeah.
Okay. It follows that the vase appears to it.
Yes.
It follows a bulbous object with a flat base capable of performing the function of holding water appears to it. I'll say it slowly. It follows a bulbous object with a flat base able to perform the function of holding water appears to it.
Except
It follows its base appears to it.
why?
Because a flat-based object appears.
No probation.
Oh, if a flat base appears, a base doesn't have to appear?
Except
If a round base appears, a base doesn't have to appear? If a
why?
round vase appears, a vase doesn't have to appear?
Why?
Because if a flat base appears, a base doesn't have to appear, and the reasoning is the same.
Oh wait, no, hold on. That one, if a flat base appears, yes.
A base has to appear. If a flat base has to appear, a base has to appear.
Yeah.
If a round base has to appear, a base has to appear. So
if a round appears,
pardon?
yeah.
Yeah.
If a
So
round
if a vase appears, a flat base has to appear.
why?
Agreed.
Agreed.
because its definition has to appear, and the definition is a bulbous phenomenon with a flat base able to perform the function of holding water. This is the literal translation from the Tibetan.
That's so
Has to
little.
appear.
I don't think I can accept that. How could that be?
You
But
don't
when, but when you look at it from the bird's eye view, you can see the bottom from the top inside,
Okay.
and it is flat.
but you
Let's
can't
say,
see it's flat. You can't see it's flat.
You can see the bottom.
If it's empty.
but let's say it's filled with milk.
Well, if it has a huge opening, no one is saying the opening has to be smaller than the base. And you see the bulbous thing first. It's got a bulbous thing. You don't see the, like if you have a bird's view, right? As Venerable Teacher said, you look from above. You've got the bulbous part, right? A person with a big belly, you don't see their feet, kind of thing, right?
But it depends on if it's an empty vase or a full vase. If it's an empty vase, then you can see the bottom.
But if you wouldn't see inside was curved, you wouldn't see outside was.
It's curved. It's bulbous.
No, she's
You know, like if
saying
a person has a big belly that goes all around, you don't see their feet, kind of idea.
it's from inside the vase. If you look into the vase, you can see the base.
Depends on how the
I think that's what she's saying.
Well, it depends how it's formed, of course. Depends how it's formed. Whether you see the base, but again, they don't see a flat base, and you don't see the base. I mean, it's like it's kind of roundish like that inside, and then there's a base underneath. That's not the base that you see, right? But anyway, never mind. So, the point is, therefore, the point is, when you perceive a part of the vase, do you see the bulbous aspect first of all? You know, if it's got a huge rim, it's got a huge opening that is larger in diameter than the bulbous part, again, right? Do you see the bulbous part? Do you see the flat base? Do you see a vase?
You just have to see a part of the vase.
So you see a part of the vase? Do you see the vase?
Well, not necessarily, but it's possible, yes.
If you see the vase, do you necessarily have to know it's the vase? If I see Kelsey, do I necessarily have to know it's Kelsey?
No, you don't.
Right? So if it's a vase, if I see a vase, do I have to necessarily know it's a vase? So when I see just a tiny aspect of it, it follows I see vase. That's not easy. It's a very difficult debate. We're a little bit off topic, but this is the debate in here that Benjamin Darpa mentions. What does it really mean to know something? Right? So again, do you see the bottom of the, and Benjamin Darpa, he basically, he says, in the end, he says, I think such and such, but analyze it, which is a way of answering, like he doesn't give a decisive answer. He says, I think so, I'm not 100% sure, debate it. Right? I'm not going to give you his view because you shouldn't adopt his view in this case. So it's like, so that's quite difficult actually. So you do perceive the vase or not? Do you have to know the vase? But even though you say, okay, I see the vase without knowing it is the vase, but to see the base, that is really weird. Shapshum. Shapshum means flat. Dodir. Dodir. So the definition is literally that which is bulbous with the flat base and able to perform the function of holding water. So it doesn't say flat-based. It sounds nice, flat-based. So you could say in English, yeah, it sees something flat-based, but it doesn't see a flat base. But the definition is literally that which is, how can I put it? That which is bulbous with a flat base and able to perform the function of holding water. That would be a literal translation of the Tibetan. So if you see a vase, you must see, or if a vase appears to you, a flat base must appear to you. And then a base must appear to you. But the example you gave was of a mind that doesn't perceive the base. It's a little difficult. This is not easy to answer honestly. Or you say you see the flat base appears, but just not aware of it. That's kind of like, what?
This is so tricky because I mean, like, you're also not going to be able to see that, yes, it's capable of holding water, because even if you see it from the side, you see that it's bulbous and it has a flat base, it might have a hole in the bottom of it.
Exactly. Again, very difficult. Exactly. Very difficult. You don't know whether it's actually hollow. It could just be, the person who created it. Very difficult. These definitions are not easy. And well, otherwise you wouldn't have anything to debate on. So it's good to define it that way. Yes. It could have a hole. It could, yeah, absolutely. Okay. Anyways, so that just came up. But basically what Ben Benjamin Darby, as part of this debate, then says that he says the definition here, let's find it. All right, so he first says this. Some say that the definitions of these two are respectively engaging with one's object by dividing it. Or what was it in the other book? By parsing, not parsing. He used a different term in a partial manner. In a partial manner. So engaging in its object in a partial manner. That is so someone, according to Benjamin Darpa, that's the definition of someone engaging with one's object in a partial manner, and then engaging with one's object without or not in a partial manner. That would be the opposite. Others say engaging with one's object through the elimination of what it is not, and engaging with one's object without eliminating what it is not. Okay. All right. Engaging with one's object through the elimination of what it is not, and engaging with one's object without eliminating what it is not. All right. So are these definitions correct or not? Well, no, some say. So they're not correct. Okay. Implied in that. It's not. Why not? Why is the first one not correct? Give me an example of something that either fulfills the definiendum but not the definition, or something that fulfills the definition but not the definiendum.
What? Could you repeat the first one?
Yes, the first one is engaging. So the definition of an eliminative engager is engaging with one's object in a partial way, in a partial manner, or in a partial way. While the definition of a collective engager is engaging with one's object not in a partial way, or in an impartial way, I think, in a non-partial way.
Maybe a blind person only engages with the tactile part of the object, and so they only engage it in a partial way, even though their tactile consciousness is a collective engagement.
But their collective engage, I mean, still the impermanence appears, still everything else appears, even though they're blind. I mean, shape and color don't appear anyway. So with regard to their body consciousness, it follows whatever appears to their body consciousness appears to the body consciousness of a person who's not blind.
But they engage in the object in a partial way, since they don't engage in everything which is one entity with the object.
So the blind person, the body consciousness that touches the vase, it follows they engage in certain things, don't engage in certain things, and we're talking about appearance here, right? It's about appearance, it's not about engaging. But anyway, so you're saying that the blind person engages in less objects than the body consciousness of the blind person engages in less objects than the body consciousness of a seeing person.
In less objects.
Yeah, it engages in a partial manner. So in other words, it doesn't engage its object in an impartial manner or in a non-partial manner. So you just said it doesn't engage in the same objects. But what is the difference between a seeing person body consciousness touching the vase and a non-seeing person's or a blind person's body consciousness touching a vase, or apprehending the tactile aspect of the vase?
No, so they're both partial. They're both partial.
So they're both partial. So it follows that the body consciousness of a person apprehending vase is a partial perceiver. It's not non-partial.
Agreed.
No. When talk to you, that's your assertion. When I talk to you, you have to defend it.
Yeah, no, I accept. Body consciousness engaging a vase only engages partially.
Okay. it follows that every sense consciousness always engages its object partially. It follows that there's no direct perception that does not engage its object with non-partially.
Well, maybe the Buddha's omniscient consciousness. The Buddha's omniscient consciousness is one, but for ordinary beings, there is none.
Okay, so every every mind apprehends its object without, I mean, literally it means, as I said before, without differentiating its parts, without differentiating between its parts, right?
Well, I don't know about that, but the one for, if you just say partial, you could interpret it this way.
In the partial manner, yeah, but because I said it before, like it's just a simpler way of saying it, right? Excuse me. It's just a simpler way of saying it. So, but actually it literally says it differentiating into its parts without differentiating into its parts and doing so. So just a quick way of saying it in English would be in a partial way or non-partial way. Right? Okay, no, of course you couldn't know that. You couldn't know that. It's actually the other way around. It's actually the Buddha's consciousness that apprehends. So it's the Buddha's consciousness that is not a direct so the collective engagers in an ordinary person's mind, they do exactly that. There's no problem. So vengeance on Dharma is not negating an ordinary person's, or it's not saying that an ordinary person's selective engager, not selective, eliminative engager, it does not fulfill this definition. He also doesn't say that this is not true in terms of a collective engager. So an eliminative engager and a collective engager in an ordinary person's mind fulfills the definition, but he says a Buddha's consciousness doesn't. A Buddha's mind does engage its object by differentiating, by dividing it. So it would follow, therefore, that the first definition, if that were the definition of an eliminative engager, it would follow that the Buddha's consciousness is an eliminative engager. Yeah, because, well, what it does is it divides it into parts. The Buddha's mind divides it into parts. It sees the object in a partial manner. It is aware, like the omniscient mind of the Buddha is aware exactly of this aspect and that aspect, so it divides it. It's aware of every single aspect of the vase, right? Okay, and they all appear separately and so forth. Then I mean, you couldn't know that. I know you couldn't know that, but I just thought to ask it anyway. So that's very difficult. The first one is difficult, but let's say the second one, engaging with one's object through the elimination of what it is not. Why is that not the definition of an eliminative engager? That should be a little bit easier. What do you think? Because that's what we usually say, engaging with this object through eliminating everything that is not it. So engaging with one's object through the elimination of what is not, what it is not. We've already
Maybe
had, yes.
it's permanent.
Pardon?
Maybe a conceptual consciousness of permanent.
The conceptual consciousness being
Of-
permanent.
Of permanent. If you think about permanent,
If you think about permanent,
I remember, like, if you just think about permanent, you don't need a meaning generality for it.
oh yes, you do.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yes. Oh yes, every conceptual mind. Otherwise, it would not be it would not be a it would not be an eliminative engager that engages this object by way of terminology.
Okay.
Right? No. Actually, when you perceive, okay, I'll tell you what it is. It's not that. It's a little bit difficult. When you perceive, for instance, an yogic direct perceiver that engages, that realizes the impermanence of sound. It does so by eliminating the permanence of sound. Right? So engaging with one's object through the elimination of what it is not. What is it not? It's not permanent. Therefore, the mind that realizes the impermanence of sound, the collective engager, the yogic direct perceiver, realizing the impermanence of sound, it eliminates the sound being permanent. Why? Because it realizes the sound being impermanent. You remember we discussed this before. that a mind that affirms the impermanence of something also eliminates the permanence of that object. Does that make sense?
It's a negative phenomenon, no? That's just
You mean the permanent? Yes, not being permanent is a permanent phenomenon. But the point is that one mind that perceives that the sound is impermanent also negates the permanence. I mean, in other words, you know automatically, if you know that sound is impermanent, you know that it's not permanent, because these are direct opposites. Of course, you need to first know permanent and impermanent, what they refer to, but someone who knows impermanence knows what permanence means as well. Does that make sense? That when you realize the impermanence of something, you also negate the permanence of that. When you know that Vas is existent, then you also negate the non-existence of Vas. That's again something we studied during collected topics. Very important idea. When two things are direct opposites, so permanent, impermanent, existent, non-existent, when you establish one on the basis of a particular object, you must negate the other.
Yeah, Sheila, we have to go to debate in 15.
Sorry, I was wondering, you were sort of looking at each other. I thought, what's going on? So sorry.
Yeah, the gong just went off.
Yes, sorry. Please go. Let's quickly do the dedication.
thoroughly investigated in accord with all that I have heard day and night through the four reasonings, my born of reflection on these topics of contemplation. May this discernment sever all doubts.
Okay, great, thank you. So we continue with the subject. Please read also what's in Science and Philosophy for tomorrow. Thank you.